The crystal chandeliers of the Sterling Room cast warm light across white linen tablecloths, but Nathaniel Cross barely noticed their glow. He sat alone at table 12, his Rolex catching the light as he turned his untouched glass of cognac in slow circles. The ribeye steak before him had gone cold. He'd ordered it out of habit, not hunger. Outside, pressed against the restaurant's tall windows, Camila Reyes watched the diners with careful eyes. Her coat, 3 sizes too large and fraying at the cuffs, did little against the November wind. She'd learned to time it right, Thursday evenings, just before closing, when guilt and leftover wine made people softer. Her hand pressed against the glass for warmth, leaving a faint print that fogged and disappeared. She counted her courage in heartbeats, then pushed through the heavy oak door. The hostess's smile froze the moment Camila stepped inside. The scent of expensive perfume and grilled meat hit her like a memory of another life, back when she'd been someone who belonged in places like this. "Excuse me, ma'am." Camila kept her voice steady despite the trembling in her legs. "I don't mean to intrude. I was wondering if anyone might have a meal they're not finishing. I'd be grateful for anything." Across the dining room, Nathaniel heard her voice. Something about its cadence, careful and educated despite its exhaustion, made him look up. Their eyes met through the maze of tables and expensive wine bottles. Camila's breath caught. The man staring at her wore a suit that cost more than she'd earned in 6 months, back when she had a salary. But his eyes held something she recognized. Something hollow that mirrored the emptiness she saw in her own reflection on storefront windows. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," the hostess said, her hand already moving toward her phone. "I understand. I apologize." Camila turned to go, but her stomach growled loud enough to betray her. She pressed a hand against it, humiliated. "Wait." Nathaniel's voice cut through the quiet restaurant. Every head turned. Forks paused mid-air. Conversations died. Camila froze, her hand still on the door handle. The millionaire was standing now, his napkin falling forgotten to his chair. He moved toward her with measured steps, his face caught between disbelief and something deeper. "May I have your leftover meal, sir?" Camila forced herself to meet his eyes, even as shame burned in her chest. "I promise I won't trouble you further." Nathaniel stopped 5 feet away. Up close, he could see the exhaustion carved into her face, the way her clothes hung on a frame that had once carried more weight. But it was her eyes that held him. Hazel with flecks of gold, intelligent and proud despite everything, the same shade as. "No. It couldn't be. What's your name?" His voice came out rougher than intended. Camila hesitated. Names made you real, made rejection cut deeper. But something in this stranger's face, the way color had drained from it, the way his jaw worked like he was swallowing back words. Camila. Camila Reyes. The name struck Nathaniel like lightning. Reyes. 4 years ago, there had been another Reyes. A brilliant young architect named Isabella who'd worked at his firm. Who'd designed the community center that won awards. Who'd talked passionately about creating spaces that served people, not just profit. Who'd spoken of her mother with such love, how she'd sacrificed everything to put Isabella through school. Isabella had died in a car accident on her way to a site inspection. Nathaniel's site. And he'd buried the guilt under insurance claims and corporate sympathy cards and the kind of distance money could buy. "How long have you been?" Nathaniel couldn't finish the question. 4 years, 3 months, 11 days. Camila's voice was steady now, almost defiant. "Since the day my daughter died and everything I'd built fell apart trying to understand why God took the only good thing I ever made." The restaurant had gone silent in that particular way expensive places do when something uncomfortable happens. Waiters stood frozen. Diners pretended to study their plates while listening to every word. Nathaniel's hand trembled as he gripped the back of a nearby chair. "Your daughter. What was her name?" Something in his tone made Camila's eyes narrow. She studied his face more carefully now, taking in the expensive watch, the custom suit, the way other diners looked at him with recognition. "Isabella. Isabella Reyes." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Why are you asking?" Act 2, Emotional Spark. The world seemed to tilt beneath Camilla's feet. She watched as recognition and horror flooded the millionaire's face, watched as he gripped the chair harder, his knuckles going white. "You're Nathaniel Cross," she said, and the name tasted like poison. "You owned the firm. You were Isabella's boss." Nathaniel couldn't speak. He remembered Isabella's passion, the way she'd stayed late perfecting designs, how she talked about her mother who cleaned offices at night to pay for architecture school. How Isabella had been driving to his site in the rain because he demanded she inspect the foundation personally, wouldn't accept a delay even though the weather was dangerous. "I knew your daughter," he finally managed, his voice breaking. "She was one of the most talented architects I'd ever worked with." Camilla's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Talented enough to die for you. Talented enough that you sent her out in a storm because your timeline mattered more than her safety." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Several diners shifted uncomfortably. The hostess had backed away completely, unsure whether to call security or simply disappear. "That's not," Nathaniel started, but Camilla cut him off. "Don't." Her voice shook now, years of buried rage finally finding its voice. "Don't you dare tell me it wasn't like that. I got the police report. I read every word 100 times until I could recite it in my sleep. Unsafe driving conditions. Poor visibility. She should never have been on that road." "You're right." The admission came out broken. Nathaniel's eyes were wet now, and he didn't bother hiding it. "She called me that afternoon. Asked if the inspection could wait until the weather cleared. And I said no. I said the investors were coming the next day, and we needed the report." Camilla swayed slightly, and Nathaniel instinctively reached out to steady her. She jerked away from his touch like it burned. "Don't touch me," she hissed. "You don't get to touch me. You don't get to look at me with those guilty eyes and think it changes anything." "I know it doesn't." Nathaniel's voice was raw. "I know nothing I say will bring her back. But I need you to know that not a day has passed when I haven't thought about that decision. When I haven't wondered if 30 minutes would have made the difference. If I just said yes, wait for tomorrow, would she still be alive?" Camilla finished, her voice cracking. "Would she still be calling me every Sunday? Would she still be sending half her paycheck home even though I told her not to? Would I still have my apartment, my job, my reason to wake up every morning?" She took a step closer to him now, and Nathaniel could see the tears streaming down her weathered face. Could smell the street on her clothes. Could see how hunger had carved her features sharp. "You want to know what destroyed me?" Camilla's voice dropped to something quieter, more dangerous. "It wasn't just losing Isabella. It was losing myself after. I couldn't work. Couldn't think. The office building where I cleaned, they let me go because I'd break down crying in empty conference rooms. The apartment Isabella and I shared, I couldn't afford it alone. Lost everything piece by piece while your lawyers sent me settlement papers with numbers that were supposed to make me forget my daughter." "I couldn't face you," Nathaniel whispered. "I couldn't go to the funeral and stand in front of you knowing that his voice broke completely. "Knowing that my ambition, my impatience, my need to impress investors cost you everything." Camilla's hands were shaking now, clenched into fists at her sides. For a moment, Nathaniel thought she might hit him. Part of him wished she would. "I hate you," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I've hated you for 4 years. Walked past your buildings and imagined them crumbling. Saw men in expensive suits and wondered if they were you, if they'd look through me the way you probably looked through Isabella." "I never looked through her," Nathaniel said urgently. "She was brilliant. She challenged me. She made me think about what we were building and why. She made me want to be better." He paused, his throat tight. "And then I sent her to die in the rain." The words hung between them, stark and true. Camilla's anger seemed to drain away all at once, leaving only exhaustion. She swayed again, and this time she didn't pull away when Nathaniel steadied her elbow. "I came here for food," she said quietly. "Not for this. Not for you. I just wanted something to eat so I could sleep tonight without my stomach screaming." Nathaniel looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd raised a genius, who'd worked night shifts and sacrificed everything, who'd been reduced to begging for scraps while he sat in restaurants pushing away expensive meals he didn't want. "Then let me feed you," he said. "Please. Not as payment. Not as absolution. Just let me give you a meal. Let me sit with you and tell you about Isabella. The things you might not know. The way she talked about you in meetings. The pride in her voice when she said 'my mother,' like it was a title more important than architect." Camila's breath hitched. Her eyes searched his face, looking for lies, for manipulation, for anything except the raw grief she saw mirrored there. "Why?" The question came out broken. "Why would you want to sit with someone who hates you?" "Because I'm drowning," Nathaniel admitted. "I've been drowning for 4 years in guilt and money that means nothing and success that tastes like ash. And maybe I don't deserve to sit with you. Maybe I don't deserve to speak her name. But I need to tell you that your daughter mattered. That she changed me. That I think about her every single day." Camila stood frozen, caught between hunger and pride, between rage and a desperate need to hear Isabella's name spoken with love instead of legal jargon. The restaurant held its breath. "One meal," Camila finally said, her voice barely audible. "You tell me about my daughter. And then we never see each other again." "One meal," Nathaniel agreed, though something in his chest knew it wouldn't end there. "If you could have one more conversation about someone you lost, what would you want to hear? Share your thoughts with us." Act 3. Emotional Bonding. They sat at Nathaniel's table, the cold steak pushed aside as a waiter brought fresh food. Camila tried to maintain composure, tried to eat slowly, but her body betrayed her desperation. She was starving. Nathaniel watched, not with pity but with something closer to reverence. This woman who'd lost everything still held her fork with grace. Still whispered thank you to the waiter. Still had dignity where he'd only guilt. "She kept your photo on her desk," Nathaniel began quietly. "In a small silver frame. You were younger in it, wearing a yellow dress. She said it was from her graduation day." Camila's hand stilled, fork halfway to her mouth. "She kept that? I didn't know she'd taken it." She looked at it every morning before starting work. Sometimes when projects got stressful, I'd see her turn the frame toward her, like she was asking your advice. Nathaniel's voice grew soft. "Once I asked her about it. She said, 'That's my mother. She cleaned buildings so I could design them. Everything I am, I owe to her.'" A tear slid down Camila's cheek, landing in her soup. She didn't wipe it away. "The community center she designed," Nathaniel continued, "the one that won the architecture award. Do you know why she fought so hard for that project?" Camila shook her head, unable to speak. "Because it was in the neighborhood where you used to work. She said she wanted to build something beautiful in a place that had only ever seen your back bent over a mop. She said you deserved to walk past something magnificent and know your daughter made it." Camila set down her fork, covered her face with weathered hands. Her shoulders shook with sobs she'd held back for 4 years. And Nathaniel, this man in his expensive suit who'd caused all her pain, reached across the table and held her hand. Not patting, not comforting. Just present. Just there. "I never saw it finished," Camila whispered through her tears. "After she died, I couldn't bear to go. Couldn't stand to see her dream standing there without her in it." "It's beautiful," Nathaniel said gently. "Children play there every day. Families gather there. Your daughter built something that brings joy to hundreds of people. And inside the main entrance, there's a plaque with her name. Isabella Reyes, architect. Visionary. Beloved daughter." Camila looked up, her eyes red and searching. "You put that there?" "I did. After the funeral, I couldn't attend. After the settlement papers, I sent instead of showing up. It was cowardly, but it was all I knew how to do." He paused. "I'm sorry, Camila. I'm so deeply, unforgivably sorry." They sat in silence for a long moment, two people bound by grief and guilt and a ghost who'd been brilliant and kind. "Tell me more," Camila finally said, her voice hoarse. "Tell me everything. I need to know she was happy. That the last months of her life weren't just work and stress. that she laughed, that she lived. So Nathaniel told her about Isabella's infectious laugh that would ring through the office, about how she'd bring homemade lunch and share it with anyone who looked hungry, about the young interns she mentored, how patient she was with their mistakes, about the stray cat she'd adopted that lived in the office and how she'd named it Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank. Camila laughed through her tears. She named a cat Frank. She said he had strong opinions about design. Nathaniel smiled. He's still there, actually. In the office. I couldn't bear to get rid of him. He sleeps on her old desk. Camila's face softened. For the first time since entering the restaurant, she looked almost peaceful. They talked through the night as the restaurant emptied around them. Camila shared memories of Isabella's childhood, the scraped knees and big dreams, the way she'd draw buildings on every surface, even the condensation on windows. And slowly, in the space between stories, something unexpected happened. Not forgiveness, that was too big, too soon. But perhaps the beginning of understanding. The recognition that they were both human, both broken, both carrying Isabella's memory in different ways. As dawn began to paint the windows gold, Nathaniel made an offer. Not with money this time, but with his whole self. I have an apartment. It's empty right now, in a building I own on Maple Street. And the community center Isabella designed, it needs a manager. Someone who understands its purpose, its heart. He looked directly into Camila's eyes. I can't undo what I did. But I can offer you a place to sleep and meaningful work, if you're willing. Not as charity. As what should have been offered 4 years ago. Camila's first instinct was to refuse, to cling to the familiar pain. But then she heard Isabella's voice in her memory. Mama, you taught me to build bridges, not walls. I don't want your guilt, Camila said carefully. But I do want to see what my daughter built. I want to walk through those doors every day and remember why she fought so hard for it. Then it's not guilt, Nathaniel replied. It's honoring her legacy. Together. Camila extended her hand across the table. It was weathered from street life, scarred from survival, trembling with emotion. Nathaniel took it, and in that grip was everything unsaid, apology and acceptance, grief and hope, an ending and a beginning. One condition, Camila said. You establish a safety foundation in Isabella's name. Real protocols. No more pushing people to work in dangerous conditions. No more young lives lost because someone chose deadlines over safety. Done, Nathaniel said without hesitation. I'll start immediately. And you'll help me run it. Nobody knows better than you what it costs when we fail. As they walked out of the Sterling room together, the morning sun painted the city in gold. Camila paused on the sidewalk, looked up at the sky, and whispered, I love you, Mija. Always. Nathaniel heard it and said nothing, giving her the moment. Thank you, Camila said, turning to him with eyes that were clearer now, less haunted. Not for the meal. Not for the apartment. For giving me back pieces of my daughter I thought I'd lost forever. Thank you, Nathaniel replied, his voice thick with emotion, for not letting me hide anymore. For showing me that redemption isn't about forgetting, it's about facing what we've done and choosing, every day, to do better. They walked different paths that morning, but they'd walk together again. In the community center where Isabella's vision would continue serving families. In board meetings where safety would never again be compromised. In quiet moments when grief still struck sharp and sudden, and they'd need someone who understood. 2 weeks later, Camila stood in front of the community center for the first time in 4 years. Nathaniel stood beside her, silent support. The building was everything Isabella had promised, glass and light and open spaces designed for joy. She traced her daughter's name on the bronze plaque, and finally, blessedly, she smiled.